Call to order for the Watertown City Council meeting for March 6, 2023. I apologize that I was the cause of being late. Please rise while Jeff Ruggles, the chaplain for the Watertown Police Department, gives us a prayer as an invocation.
Father, we thank you for this evening. We thank you that we can come together and have a meeting about a great city and a great place to live. And God, I pray that you would guide and direct the ladies and gentlemen that lead this meeting and that are taking part in it. And pray that you would continue to bless our city. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Finance Officer Bob Zine, please call the roll.
Okay. Bueller.
Here.
Danforth. Absent. Holeen.
Here.
Paulson. Shuddy.
Here.
Tupper.
Here.
Vilhauer.
Here.
Thank you.
Quorum is established. With that, the chair will entertain a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda. Motion made by Councilman Bueller, seconded by Councilman Paulson. Any comments on that motion? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Now is the time for public comments. If anyone is here who would like to address the council on something that is not on tonight's agenda, now is your time to do so. Seeing no one come forward, I will close the public comments and open it up for a motion to approve tonight's agenda. Motion made by Councilman Vilhauer, seconded by Councilman Bueller. Any comments on that? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the agenda. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item A is an approval of Resolution 23-08, accepting the State Water Resources Management System grant for the Big Sioux Flood Control Study and authorization for the city manager to execute documents related to the state system grant for the Big Sioux Flood Control Study. Our Public Works Director, Heath Von Eye, will make better sense of that than what I just did.
I apologize for the Department of Redundancy Department title that we included in the agenda there. So this is, as was stated twice in the title, it's a formality really to accept the funding that the state's already offered us. If the council could recall, several months back we submitted an application through the state and their SWARMS program, the State Water Resources Management System, to help fund our local share of the Big Sioux Flood Control Feasibility Study. That study is being ran by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. We've got federal funding to cover half of the estimated $1.8 million cost for the study. So the local share of $900,000 is made up of half state funding now, with this resolution to formalize the $450,000 coming from the state and the other $450,000 coming from the city that we've got earmarked and budgeted for. So again, simple formality to approve what we've already applied for and be processed onto the state from here if this is approved tonight.
Thank you very much. Chair will entertain a motion to approve that resolution. Motion made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Vilhauer, I think. Shuddy. Open it up for questions and comments. Council? Councilman Vilhauer.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of questions, really not so much on this, but how much have we as a city have we paid already? We had 25,000 first go around, and what, 200 just recently?
Yeah, I believe the second round of commitment, as Justin's trying to recall from his memory too in the crowd here, the assistant city engineer. Yeah, I believe it's somewhere around there, Councilman Villar, a couple $100,000 the second.
And then do we have any kind of commitment coming from the Lake and Pesca Water Project District on this project?
At this time, I don't believe so.
Okay. I know that it sticks in my mind that in the past that had been brought up. I didn't know where we were with them this time around. Okay, that's all I got. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the resolution. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item B is an approval of a resolution authorizing the city manager to apply and accept a grant through the South Dakota Game Fish and Parks Match Grant Program to aid in financing recreational trail system repairs for the city of Watertown. For more information, we will actually go to our Game Fish and Parks Director, or are we going to City Manager Mack first? Park and Rec Director. What did I say?
Game, fish, and parks.
Well, you do fish a lot. So anyway, Park and Rec and Forestry Director, Dusty Roddick.
Okay, there, that's better. I can address this item or both items if you would prefer, the following item.
I'll give you Grant to talk to both, yes.
Okay, both of these are resolutions of support that will be included in the grant application program. The first one is a recreational trails program. We are looking to request $250,000 towards trail repairs. This is a match grant. As little as 20, but if you submit a little more as a local match, you get a better score. So we're probably looking at a match, $40,000 level on this one for the community's input. The second one would be a Land and Water Conservation Fund grant application, and we would be looking at requesting $150,000 towards Cook Complex improvements. Both of these items, the matching grants or the matching funds are already included in the 2023 budget. So we already have the matching funds in place dedicated through other accounts. Any questions?
We'll take that up. I will allow council leniency to ask questions on either B or C at this point, but specifically on B, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the resolution 23-09, which is item B. Motion made by Councilman Vilhauer, seconded by Councilman Bueller. Now open it up for questions and comments. Councilman Tupper.
Mayor, can I ask a question that kind of relates to both at the same time?
Yes, please.
So, other words, Dusty, the basically $400,000 that we're gonna, part of it's gonna be a matching fund 20, and what do you think on the 150?
The Land and Water is a 50-50 grant.
Okay, so we're gonna be able to do about $400,000 more worth of work than what or not all of it, but how did you get $150,000 from the LWCF to fix the softball field?
We haven't got it yet. We need to apply for that. But it's interesting because the Land and Water Conservation Funds have actually funded a lot of projects in this community, but it's been nearly 20 years since the city has applied for those grant funds. Actually, LWCF was applied for last year. That will be helping to fund the Lions Park Playground in this coming year. But prior to that, I believe the last project funded through Land and Water was 93. So this is Cook Complex was one of those projects that was originally funded through Land and Water Conservation Funds, and they like to see the things that they put money into, be maintained and improved.
Do you see somewhat of a scope of what the improvements would be on Cook Complex?
Actually, we're looking at a comprehensive improvements on there. There's actually money budgeted in the 23 budget specifically for Cook Complex this year. We're looking at probably doing some field leveling. There's some really serious lips on that field. That will probably be our focus this year. We'll apply for this funding. Next year, there's also funding in there for other improvements, and going along with fences, bleachers, shelters, things like that. And we will just add the Land and Water Conservation funding to that to really put hopefully a bow on that.
Thank you for your forward thinking and your scope of work on these matching or these grants.
Thank you. Councilman Vilhauer.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to echo what Councilman Tupper just said too, Dusty, as far as looking ahead and getting these grants in place. A question though on the trail, that is for repairs.
That would be for repairs.
Okay, we've got the funding in place for the trail work for around the lake that's already in place.
Correct.
I've got citizens out there holding my feet to the fire as far as what the next step. So there will be a segment or a couple segments done in 2023 on that trail, is my understanding.
That I would have to defer to our city engineers. I believe construction of any additional trails is slated for 24, 25. Would that be correct? 24? 24.
So it's 24, 25? Okay, last time.
Just 24.
Oh, it's all in 24?
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
Completion of that loop is expected in
Okay,
24.
I thought part of it was going to be done this year and then finished in 24, but that's not, it's all in 24. Okay. Thank you.
Councilman Shetty.
Thank you, Mayor. Quick question here too. Maybe it's premature, but on the recreational trail, with the areas you're fixing, are they going to be, is there consideration for concrete versus asphalt for some of those repair areas, those tougher, lower lying areas, or?
The answer to that, yes. We are hoping to carry over some trail money from last year. Our intention is to fix some of the worst areas, with concrete this construction season. This grant, just the way they cycle and everything else and timing, these would be more for repairs in 24, and those would likely be overlays. That's, an overlay on some of our current system.
Director Roddick, do we know where those repairs would be at on
This year's or?
this year's,
Yes.
if we were to get the grant? So,
Oh, if we were to get the grant, those
Yeah.
would be 24 repairs.
okay.
Those it's interesting because I have to write the grant before we get the pavement study back. But staff has been on those trails and they have a good understanding which are the worst segments. So that's still, we're trying to still create that plan for the grant application. For the repairs we would like to do this year, it would be those low areas going between town and the lake. There's about 2,700 foot of.
Out of curiosity, but that pavement management system, I know that that's what we call the roads. I don't know what we call the recreational trail.
It's the same system
Yeah.
that does it, so it's still pavement management.
Does the credibility of that study enhance our chances of getting grants like this?
It
either
does.
now or in the future?
It absolutely does. It lays out the condition of our existing trails, how long they've been there, how badly they are in need of repair. So
That's one of those questions I knew the answer, but I wanted it on record because people should know that this is part of a plan that we work through as a city so that we know what we're doing in step 1 to get to this step 5 and hopefully to get to step 10. So
right, rather than a shotgun approach,
Yes.
it's more strategic.
Thank you. Councilman Bueller.
Thanks, Mayor. Dusty, can we run these LWCF grants concurrent? I mean, can we have parallel grants?
Yes.
That we're, like, for the pickleball, that's something that is that the same, one of the same grants?
Pickleball, we applied for Wellmark Foundation grants for that one.
Okay.
So that would be a completely different grant program.
But you used this grant in Brookings, did you not?
Correct.
Okay, for the pickleball project?
Right.
Okay, just curious if you could run more than one at the same time. Thank you.
It's allowed, but, when you're requesting a grant, your best case scenario is pick one. So.
Any further questions, comments? Okay, we are just voting on item B, which is on the grant for the recreational trail system repairs. All those in favor of that resolution, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item C is an approval of a resolution for the city manager to apply and accept a grant through the Land and Water Conservation Fund for the Cook Softball Complex. We've already heard testimony on this. Without any objection, the chair will open it up for a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved.
Motion made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Shetty. Questions or comments, council? Hearing none, the motion is to approve this resolution. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Item D is an approval of a resolution adopting a procurement policy for the city of Watertown and authorizing the city manager to administer and update the policy as needed. We will go to said city manager, Amanda Mack.
Is that like alleged city manager?
Well, I had already referenced the
Got
city
it.
manager
All
as
right.
said city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. What you have before you tonight is, well, sort of a labor of love. We've been working on this for quite some time. What a procurement policy is it provides clear directive to staff and vendors on how we expend budgeted city dollars. So you've all had a chance to look at this. I do have hard copies for you that incorporate some grammatical and formatting changes. No content has been changed from when you've had an opportunity to review it. The intent is to administer this to the city manager's office and to provide some equitability across the departments on how who has the authority to purchase, at what levels, when. And again, these are for budgeted items. Anything that comes up that is over budget or not in the budget automatically comes to the council. We took examples from several different communities, City of Aberdeen, City of Brookings, City of Spencer, City of Gillette, and took their work and applied it to how we currently operate. And that's what you have in front of you. So a lot of work has gone into this. Heath and his team, Kristen, the other department heads have all weighed in, and I will stand by for any questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Chair will entertain a motion to approve this resolution. Motion made by Councilman Paulson, second by Councilman Vilhauer. I will open up for questions and comments. The first one will be from me to City Manager Mack. How big of a city manager level of passion must you have to classify this as a labor of love?
It really is. I've made the comment to several of you that 2023 is sort of the year of busy work because I can't find another term for it, but things like this that now that we are well into this new form of government that just align everyone and make sure we're all operating from the same playbook is really important. So it is a labor of love and a little bit of hatred, and there's probably still some typos in though, even though I've looked at it 300 times. So
Thank you. Open it up for questions and comments. Councilman Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to start by saying this is long overdue. I think this is a really good step for the staff to have on record and to use this tool. So hopefully it makes their job a little bit easier going forward. And just wanted to say thank you to staff for all the time they put in for it.
Councilman Tupper.
City Manager Mack, and I know basically probably months of work has gone into this. A lot of input from city staff, department heads. I got to thank them all for all their hard work. Did you run into any problems with it? I mean, as far as any issues, as far as staff or department heads or anything, seen it?
No. I think, we've had some good discussions about how we currently operate, how do we want to operate in the future. I think one key takeaway as well is that a lot of what's in here is set by statute. And so it really is just compiling it into one place. So employees and vendors also, I mean, that's the intended audience is employees and vendors. Vendors know how we're going to pay them, what methods of payment they can expect. The bid laws are all laid out in here. So in terms of issues amongst the staff, no, I wouldn't say that there are any. And everyone, we've been working on this, it has been months. I think we presented the draft document to department heads back in December, maybe. And leading up to that was a lot of just compiling and figuring out where we're at. So.
Just a quick follow-up. I don't think this was ever brought forward with any indication of any major issues that we had
No,
with procurement.
no, this is
just- and I wanna-
really, like I said, having everything in one place. I don't know, what's the policy say? So we do run into things, throughout our workday that is a little ambiguous currently, and there still may be some ambiguity in this, but we're trying to provide a clear direction and clear path for anyone who's doing any kind of purchasing or expending of city dollars within the organization.
I just wanted to bring that up for the public, basically, to know that this didn't come about
No.
because there was something that wasn't right. This is
We
just
did
you.
also forward this out to our auditor, just for review. We've not gotten a response, but, you know, not that we want to be like every other community, but this is a generally accepted practice in communities, especially of our size.
Thank you.
Councilman Vilhauer.
Thank you, Mayor. I think you've probably touched on a few of the questions I was going to ask Manager Mack. Have to remember, I was an auditor in a previous life, and just a few questions that come into mind as I go through this. We talk about the system of expenditures, procurement, et cetera. I'm assuming that does not open up the checkbook as far as who has access to check writing and things along those lines. I'm glad to see our city, but I just want to make that clear.
Yep.
Because when the public hears purchasing, they may think, well, that mean our staff is going to be writing checks out whenever
No.
something comes up. So I want to get that on record and clarify that. I assume our city attorney has also
Yes.
looked at this, and because you referenced state statute, and there's a lot of things in here. So I'm glad.
We did an entire session just reference checking to make sure that
Okay.
what we referenced actually says what we thought it said, and yeah,
Okay.
so there are multiple sets of eyes on that.
I am glad to hear that you did reach out to our auditor. I'm a little bit disappointed that they have not gotten back to us. I'd also consider reaching out to the Department of Legislative Audit, see if the DLA says anything about this, good, bad, or otherwise. But I support this. Just a few questions that come to mind as I read through this.
Councilman Shetty.
Thank you, Mayor. I as well do appreciate all the work that we can only guesstimate how long you guys have been working on this. One category I just have a quick question on is on page 11, called P-card use. So purchasing, I would assume, with some sort of type of credit card, debit card, or something like that. Just a question on, is that something that, where are we at in that, using those? Is that something new? I guess just an overview
Sure.
of that.
So P-card is a credit card for city employees to use. We currently have a handful of cards that some departments have their own cards. The finance department has cards that can be checked out. I think that the current credit card policy was written in about 1996, and so this just updates it. We currently, employees are using their own personal cards to make purchases, travel, things like that, and then they're getting reimbursed. And so providing them the opportunity to have a credit card just streamlines our processes a little bit. And we'll work on the internal side on you know, who gets those. I've been in communities where it's just the manager, just the department heads. My last community, every employee had one. So we'll find the right balance internally and find the right balance on terms, right? Like how much is your credit limit? But we would work with our local bank, which is Relia Bank. They hold the city account. So.
Any further questions or comments? I guess I have one. I just want to clarify. I'm looking here at 3.2.1, contractual agreements that might, for services. I just want to make certain, and I know that it's based upon the annual budget appropriation, but so if it's a service agreement or any agreement that would span over 1 year, that would require to go to council.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then also any service agreement that was agreed upon would have to be reviewed annually in the budget appropriation. Okay. And then the other question that I had was in 313, this is just in the collusion, let's say the trust but verify department.
Okay.
In this case, it was said if there's any problem with collusion or, let's see if I get the exact language.
Anti-competitive practices.
Collusion or anti-competitive practices. It says that the report would go to the city manager and the city attorney. Just out of curiosity, what if the city manager and city attorney were using the collusion or bad practices?
Well, that's a great question. I would assume at some point if there was collusion or anti-competitive practices, the police department would be involved and they would take it on to the state's attorney.
So
Someone would have to make a claim that that was happening.
I'm just saying, it's like, because if the report
Right.
is from an, like, someone in City Hall, the report goes up and it goes to the city manager and city attorney, not saying it's you two, but if we're setting a policy for future councils, this is potentially, where's the oversight on that, I guess is my question.
I don't have a good answer for that. Yeah, I don't have a good answer for that
Okay.
right now. So
Like I said, I don't think it would happen, and I think it would be caught, but at the same time, it's a question.
yeah. it could
City
go to
Attorney
finance.
Carrico, do you have anything to add on that?
My only thought is to have the city finance officer be that conduit if it was the city manager or city attorney, and maybe copy the mayor. That would be my two thoughts on that.
Councilman
And I
Vilhauer.
think also your budget would still serve as somewhat of a guardrail too, as far as the dollars that could be involved.
That's a good point.
But that would put a limit on how much somebody could get away with.
Right. Right.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah, Director Von Eye.
I just wanted to point out that section is specific to bidders or offerers, so that's in the case of collusion outside the city, contractors colluding together, to make up their numbers in a way that's anti-competitive, which on a rare case can happen. But I just wanted to point that out. That's not speaking to internal collusion, but external collusion by bidders or offerers on things that we have out for bid or proposals. Which begs the question, should we have a section that refers to internal collusion?
Well,
Yeah.
I guess I was thinking more internal, but because if it's external, then it would be a bid process that would likely be brought to the council.
I would say to Councilman Vilhauer's point, the budget will govern a lot of that and the audits. The annual audit that we go through would likely, if there were something, it
yeah.
would come forward through the audit.
I would guess the audit is probably the most likely because, yeah, I'll just put it that way. No need to expound on that. I guess I'm not 100% soothed by that, but the audit does make it better because it would get caught. So, and then someone who wants to be a bad actor in this could only, let's say, extort a certain amount that would be appropriated under something already approved. And it has to be under the certain amount that is already listed in here, so.
Yeah, there is a whole section on the employees, Section 5, Ethics and Public Contracting, which I do think covers some of the concerns that you've brought up.
And I apologize for this, it's just Finance Director Bob Zine.
The only thing I'll add too, when we do talk about procurement of anything, the council every month sees all the checks that are written and at any point can also ask what those are for. I, as the finance officer, every month before you see them, I see them. And if I have questions, I also pull them. I watch very closely for reimbursements to employees, make sure that it is a legit reimbursement. So, I mean, we also have some other back processes that the finance office does, and council at any time can ask to see the detail of a bill. So, thank you.
All right, thank you, Director Bob Zine. Just one more question on that. So a credit card purchase or the PC card purchase would show up as a check?
No.
Okay,
So
it
that's
would
the
just show
one-
up as a credit card
Yep.
reimbursement?
Yep. So that's the one reason. So our current system, part of the reason why we've held to what we do for the credit cards is because our current software doesn't allow for us to provide detail to the council about what is being purchased. So the only way you're going to see it is if you actually ask for the statement. So that's why we haven't kind of broadened that out. Now, my understanding is with our software upgrade that's happening, I'll be able to say city manager's credit card purchased XYZ, and you can see the detail in that payment versus just it's a payment to the credit card company. So that's a little bit of a change that will give that transparency.
But also just to clarify, currently, when someone uses a city credit card, we have the detail. It's just how we process it as a report for you all doesn't show the detail. So if anyone wanted to see it, they could.
So, thank you. And I'm just asking the questions because out in the private sector, people will tell you that most of the large amounts of theft happen over in small portions over time. And if you give any employee access to spend up to a certain amount, but you don't cap it on how many times and there isn't a constant vigil over it, that is how large amounts get taken out of a budget. So that's my concern. I just wanted to address that in public. So, okay. Let's see. Any further questions or comments? All right, with that, the motion is to approve the resolution. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. We are on to item E, a first reading of an ordinance amendment on the city council procedure. And for that, we will also go to our city manager, Amanda Mack.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, 2023, the year of busy cleanup work. This actually came about, I was looking to make some changes to how we structure our agenda, as the city manager is responsible for the creation of the council agenda, and learned that we couldn't change the agenda without actually changing the ordinance, because currently the ordinance outlines basically every step of the procedure that you all follow, as well as the specific titles and flow of the agenda. So upon discussion with our city attorney and our mayor and deputy mayor, finance officer, believe that these amendments are appropriate given the new form of government. A lot of them are redundant. You are already operating under these ways, and also provides some flexibility for future councils to amend how you work with one another without going through an ordinance amendment every time. So, and I would stand by for questions, and I know Lisa's available for questions as well.
Thank you. This is a first reading, so there's no official action, so we'll open it up for questions and comments. Maybe there'll be some at the second reading. Item F is a first reading of ordinance, an ordinance amendment on curb space reservation of the revised ordinances of the city of Watertown, removing chapter 19-0410 curb space reservation. We'll go to our Public Works Director, Heath Van Eye, for an explanation.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a topic that's come to light here off and on over the past couple, I don't know, maybe 2-3 years now. It became probably most prevalent during COVID in 2020 and shortly thereafter, where businesses downtown were trying to seek availability of parking spaces or reserved parking spaces for customers for their businesses as they transition into a phase of drive-up customers, as we all experienced, during and after COVID. Essentially, what this section of Chapter 19 does is it allows for the council to approve reserved parking spaces for an entity under certain criteria. And after we went through that process for a few different businesses, the council and staff decided to put a moratorium on and we ceased issuing those reserved stalls for the time being as we did some research on this. And essentially what it boils down to is pretty straightforward, is just striking that section of the ordinance and keeping all the public on-street parking stalls just as that, public for all the general public to access. And it does strike then the allowance for the council, or sometimes the trials of the council to have to pick the winners and losers on who gets a reserve stall and who doesn't, and removes that from the ordinance. So that's what's before the council tonight in first reading fashion, is that ordinance amendment, simply striking that that language from Chapter 19. And Justin Peterson's here tonight. I know Rob Bannon, Street Superintendent, Police Chief Toomey. We've all worked on this collectively with the city manager, and all of us stand by for any questions you might have.
City Manager Mack would like to add something.
I would just like to add a point of clarity. At the work session where this was discussed, we also discussed some additional parking options. Those are not being considered tonight. Just for public clarity, the only thing being considered tonight is the removal of the reserved parking spaces. Those other options, ideas will be vetted out at a later time.
Thank you. This is a first reading. I don't need to open up a public hearing, but I know that there is at least one person here who would like to testify on this, and I will grant that leniency.
Hi, Mark Buller, owner of Needlework Sewing Center and Pitmaster Supply. We're in our 20th year downtown. We started in 2003 on Broadway, and in our 6th year in our current location. And we've seen a lot of change over the years. Largely, when we moved into the location, it was rather dilapidated. We did a lot of improvements, largely to have a good public eye. We want to attract customers, and but the things that have changed largely is the inhabitants of renters. We've had tenants throughout our existence there. Also next door to the 218 location, that was at one time dilapidated to the point where I was worried about having to recover from it being demolished. It had about an 8-foot by 8-foot hole in the roof. It was just in really bad shape. So now that has 4 apartments with dwellers and parking of their cars in the street area there. Also down the road used to be a Hanson Furniture and floor covering. That is now a pottery craft place, and that can draw quite a crowd for birthday events and so forth. Plus now we don't have near 100 spots across the street to mitigate some of that, tenant traffic and gym traffic and so forth. So we're really feeling a ton of pressure. When we had an accounting firm next door, folks would pull up, park right in front of our door, walk to the accountant. So now you got a person in their advanced years with a sewing machine wanting to come in to bring it in for repair, and they see cars in front and they just assume we're busy, or they just don't want to try to carry it half a block. So the other side of things, we sell pellet smokers. So we have 40-pound bags of pellets going out the door frequently. And, again, close proximity and parking is very important to our business. So the passage of something that would restrict our ability to put out signage to kind of mitigate and just kind of, in a sense, educate the public to our need that we need to have our customers have ready access to our building. It would really be a struggle for us to exist. I don't really want to move again. I'd like to have 30 years under my belt before I, do something different than Needlework Sewing Center and Pitmaster Supply. So I'm just here and I guess pleading for some sort of solution to be able to still continue to put out the signage. Again, it's a kind of an education. I could change wording to be, hey, this is public parking. We're just asking that you reserve these spots for people carrying heavy items in and out of our store. So I don't know if there's possibly for that consideration or what your scope is, but
All right, thank you very much. Chair will open, this is first reading, so no official action is taken, but I will open it up for questions and comments. Councilman Shetty?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate you showing up to do this today, because every business is different from one to the other. So I know it is a challenge that we've been trying to work on, what works best. So again, just the fact that you're here, and part of the how we do things is much appreciated. Who knows how the outcome will be? We got to work through that, but just want to I appreciate your time here.
Okay. Councilman Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Some may recall when Mark first came for an application, I did say something at that time because I wasn't aware of the type of business or the need for a parking spot at that time. But that brings up the point of us trying to pick and choose who gets a parking spot. It's hard for us as council members and our staff, or the staff of the city, to determine who would need a parking spot and who to deny possibly, or who to approve. And I guess this is why it's been brought up, and this is the discussion. It's not we're not trying to say you don't deserve parking or but how are we to choose consistently who is right and wrong? Because we can't give every single business reserved parking spots. Otherwise, we would have no public parking spots downtown. So that's why it's up today. I know we've had a lot of discussions as the council, and we just had a work session on it. So, but I do appreciate your comments, Mark.
Well, the spots are still public, even though there's signage in front of them. They're still, we can't take it in tow. So it doesn't remove them from the public offering. It just requests for lack of a better term, people don't really consider when they're parking in front of a building that what's inside and what kind of business they're trying to do. They just park wherever it's handy. I have machines that weigh over 120 pounds, multi-needle sewing machines. And they cost, MSRP is about $24,000. So, when I sell one of those, the city benefits. So, if I can't have customers, I can't have sales. If I can't have sales, it's not going to be good. So, it's an existence thing. It was when I put in for it. It was to exist, not for COVID, not, I'd like to, put another 10 years in.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? I'd just like to say thank you, Mr. Bowler, for showing up. We are very aware of the nature of your business, and like a lot of people understand the machines but not the pellets and how heavy they can be, and how people just want to come in and get the pellets and take it away, and that's for a lot of our local restaurants as well. So I get that. You yourself touched upon some of the issues that we're facing as a council when we're trying to understand this. Is you listed off some of the apartments that are in your building now. That downtown parking is for apartment dwellers is a much larger topic that, tell you what, if anyone has a silver bullet that could solve all of that at once, we'd welcome it. But we've had multiple conversations in public and in work sessions regarding that aspect. And I will just say, and I know that you would understand this as well, for every one of these signs that we issue, we receive 2 complaints from businesses that did not get them. So it's a tough balance that we have to draw. So it's a first reading. We will have a second reading on this. So like I said, if anyone has that silver bullet, we'd welcome it. So
just make one other point. It's one thing to not permit the signage, but then what would be done to help counteract there not being there? Would there be influence by the city to influence landowners to get their tenants to use the multi-alphabet parking spaces that are 72-hour spaces? Would there be, you know, encouragement for gym inhabitants, instead of parking in front of my building, to, you know, walk that half a block to the one south of the church? You know, it's same distance roughly, but it's not as visible. You know, would there be efforts to try to mitigate something that would take the pressure off? You know, is there a limitation on how many seats do we have, you know, for a business to be in? It's like, to me, it's almost like I'm no longer welcome downtown.
Oh, Mr. Buller, please, no, that's definitely not the case. We welcome and appreciate all of our downtown businesses. But you yourself just listed off one of those contentious things. You're essentially in competition with your business partner across the street for parking spots. That's a tough situation for the city to be put in the middle of, to arbitrate or between a dispute over who gets priority parking. In those competing businesses. So it's not that we're just trying to level the playing field, I think, is what the effort is trying to do, so that everyone plays by the same rules. Because, as you can see, I mean, we could have the owner of the competing business coming up here and saying, you're taking away one of his spots. I mean, just saying, the argument could be made. And also, and I will say, regarding like the trying to push some of the parking off onto some of the lots for the apartments, we just had a long work session. I don't know if that was recorded. Was that recorded? Well, we'd have to check on that, but we're still very much interested in finding a solution for the downtown parking. We've explored the options of forcing people to remove their cars from downtown parking overnight, from limiting how many hours in a row they could park there, having it just on certain days, forcing apartment dwellers to have some sort of a pass. We've explored all of these, and we have not come up with anything that we agree upon as a group yet, because for every positive, there's a negative on that. So we're still trying to find out solutions on like the apartment issue in particular. Councilman Tupper?
Thank you, Mayor. I think if you look back, City Manager Mack made probably the most greatest comment that makes sense. We don't really have a parking issue downtown. We have a walking issue, and there's tons of parking spots downtown, and somehow, and the mayor just covered with part of that, is that's what we're trying to do, is figure out a solution to, we want people to live downtown. Somebody lives downtown, he's got out on his back deck that's got a pellet grill. We want him to be able to walk to your place and buy a bag of pellets or anything like that. We want him to be able to go down the street and get something in the restaurant down the street. But they are all public parking spots. Our public parking lots are probably used, what would you say, maybe to extend to 30 or 35%?
When the police did their study, it was 30% occupancy.
So, and that's one thing I think this body is trying to do, is try to figure out a way of educating. It's more of an education purpose than anything. If we got all the tenants to sometimes park, you know, especially if they're going to be at their apartment for, say, a day or two, you know, do they need to take up a parking spot? We've got plenty of downtown parking. It's a good problem to have, because downtown's flourishing. But we want to make it fair for everybody, and I do want to thank you for coming up, bringing up your comments. But I don't think we're just going to give up on this. We're going to work on it until we try to find a solution that works for not only business people, but people that live downtown. We want people to live downtown. I think you've seen a major change in the last 5 years with the traffic downtown. We want that to continue, but we need to be able to manage it. So there again, thank you for your comments tonight.
And thank you. And I just want to clarify one thing again. I appreciate the nature of your business, and I know that it's different than a lot of other companies downtown, but to respond to your comment, we love and appreciate all of our downtown businesses, and because we love them all, we have to come up with a policy that we're not playing a favorite with one over the other, because that is then, therefore, we are choosing one over the other. And it's like choosing one child over another. It's not a situation you want to put a parent in. And in this case, we're just trying to come up with something. In this case, we're exploring the option of one rule for all is possibly the best. We don't know yet, so I just want to make that clear that we are not in any way anti-business. In fact, it's the exact opposite. So, all right. Thank you very much. We'll have a second reading on this in 2 weeks. All right. Thank you very much. Item G is an approval for a professional services agreement for a construction manager at risk for the wastewater treatment facility to Rice Lake Construction Group. Public Works Director Heath Von Eye, please tell us more.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is in relation to our large wastewater system project that we've got underway currently. If you recall, we've received close to $16 million in grants through the ARPA program and federal money channeled through the state, and then also entered into just shy of $20 million in SRF loans at a low interest rate for 30 years for these wastewater system improvements to the tune of roughly $36 million. These improvements include collection system improvements, which would include sanitary sewer main replacements, sanitary sewer main lining, in-place lining of existing pipes. It includes work on the lift stations. We have 48 lift stations, maybe 49 now, throughout our community. It includes some work on some of those, and also includes a pretty extensive upgrade to the wastewater treatment facility. We performed a few recent upgrades to the wastewater treatment plant, but these are over and above that in areas that have not been upgraded or updated in a couple decades or more now. So with all that being said, we've been working with our design engineer, HDR. We have a couple representatives from HDR here tonight with us. Delron Peters and Michael Johnson are in the room. And staff working with HDR, we thought about how to, what project delivery method, what might work best for this project, of a project of this magnitude, considering that it's got both building and facility type of components, but also some underground or more linear work, as we would call it in the industry. And after talking through that and the risk of contractor availability through the conventional design bid build process, we thought it might behoove the city to look at a CMAR for this work, a construction manager at risk. We've used this project delivery method before on other projects, as council's full well aware, most recently with the ice arena, and then our street facility that's under contract now as well. So we proceeded with sending out requests for proposals and a statement of qualifications from contractors to be our construction manager at risk. After receiving the submittals, we've assessed those and interviewed Rice Lake Construction for them to provide the CMAR duties on this project. And that is essentially what's before the council tonight. It would be an agreement with Rice Lake for what we'd be locked into, I'll say, in this agreement is phase one, which is the design phase, the pre-construction phase, for an amount of $269,650. And then subsequent to that, the council then has the authority to then approve to proceed with their services into the construction phase, and that would be on a percentage basis as is locked in with this agreement that's before the council tonight. That'd be at a 7.94% of the guaranteed maximum price is what their fee would be once, if and when we enter into the construction phase with Rice Lake. All of this is within budget. We have, through the state, in order to get our state funding, we have what's called our facility plan and the estimates associated with the facility plan. And this number does fall underneath what we had budgeted and estimated for these types of services within that facility plan. The state has to check this off as well because of the funding mechanisms that we use. They have given us the nod on this contractor and this CMAR contract, so we've checked that box as well. And I think I've hit all the highlights I wanted to hit. I also acknowledge we have Mr. Wade Leonard here in the crowd with us tonight too. He's the president of Rice Lake Construction. And he or city staff or HDR would be glad to stand by for any questions council might have.
Thank you, Director. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the agreement. Motion made by Councilman Paulson, seconded by Councilman Bueller. Open it up for questions and comments, Council. Councilman Villar.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I'm looking at this. We've got the 7.94%, excuse me, and then we also have another possible 5.035%. Can somebody explain what is one versus the other? I mean, so we're looking at potentially a total of, what, 12, 13%? Am I understanding that right?
I'm trying to follow your 5% there. Is that what the 269 equates to? Or is that written?
No, I'm looking at the possible amendment amount percentages. I'm not looking at the 269 itself, Heath.
If I could defer to Justin to talk to that. Included within the fee. Do you want to touch on that, please? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean.
City Engineer Justin Peterson, are you going to answer?
There's the 7.94%. That's the CMAR fee. Then there's also some bonds and insurance, which is a percentage of the fee, and then there's also the general conditions.
I guess that's what's. I mean, what are the general conditions, bonds, and insurance? I mean, how does that relate versus the 7.94 for the guaranteed maximum price? I mean, not being an engineer or involved in this sort of work, I'm just looking at the total percentages combined as being 12, 13%.
I'm Wade.
Please introduce yourself, sir.
Wade Leonard, Rice Lake Construction, President. The 7.94% is what you would refer to as profit and overhead. Everything required by our company to operate every day. The general conditions are specific to the project. It's the superintendent that would be on site every day. It's the trailers. It's the pieces of equipment required to be there to build your project every day. It's, the water coolers. It's everything associated with being on the ground at the wastewater plant site day to day for the duration of the project. Includes our superintendent, includes any field managers and folks like that. Everything like myself and anything with home office is covered by the 7.94% fee.
So, Councilman Vilhauer, the total, it's on how you break down these fees and whether you call it profit and overhead or the actual hard costs. That's really what the difference amounts to, is the actual hard costs versus the profit and overhead for the company to perform this work. So the tune of, including the 269 pre-construction services, 269,000, plus the CM fee, the bonds, the insurance, and the general conditions, the total amount estimated is under 3.5 million, which percentage-wise is what we checked off against our facility plan that we had on file with the state, which was higher than that, 3.5 million.
I'm not quite following what the percentages throughout, Heath, because I'm looking at, 36 million. You said how much? 3.2 million? What was it?
3.5, but that's based on the construction costs only. That 36 is everything else over and above construction. The soft costs and engineering fees, and all the soft costs brings us to that 36 million. Actually, these costs are included in that 36 million too. So these percentages are based on the construction costs.
Okay.
Any further questions or comments? Councilman Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Heath, this was budgeted for in the $36 million.
Correct.
Okay. Just making it clear.
Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, the motion is to approve the agreement. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Nay. Motion carries. Item H is an approval of a bid award for project number 2302 to Dunning Incorporated. Our Public Works Director, Heath Von Eye, will please explain it to us.
Thank you, Mayor. This is another one of our construction projects for the 2023 season related to street work, street maintenance and rehabilitation. This one's specific to our annual mill and overlay project. We also talked into this bid award some of our large patch and that similar type work so we get some economy of scale to our bids. The low bidder on this one was Dunnick Incorporated at a tune of a little over $1.5 million. And overall, in the CIP, this is within budget. As we do most years, we have to balance these roadway projects together to make sure the overall CIP balances. So that's what we're doing with this one. This one is under the budgeted amount for this work, but we needed that excess for our recently awarded street reconstruction project. So with that, staff recommends award to Dunnick in moving this contract forward for this summer's work.
Thank you very much. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the bid award. Motion made by Councilman Bueller, seconded by Councilman Villauer. Open it up for questions and comments. Councilman Villauer.
Thank you, Mayor. It'd be helpful, I'm not opposed to this, I fully support it, but could we get an actual, I mean, I look at the map that was provided in our agenda packet, and I can't tell from that necessarily what streets or what areas are being worked on. Could we get a detail of that, Heath? I mean, because I've got people that, a couple streets in particular, they're after me for a couple of years, and I guess I'd just like to see what streets we are specifically looking at that are included in this bid package.
Yeah, absolutely. We can provide that, and staff, they're probably in the process of updating it now if they haven't already, is we've got a project story on the engineering page under Public Works and the city's website that shows all the active city construction projects. And we'll make sure to include a map of the detailed street sections that this project is related to if it's not already in there, but also share it directly with the council.
That'd be helpful. Thank you.
Councilman Tupper.
Public Works Director Von Eye, does this also include, I had it right tip of my tongue a second ago, asphalt ceiling?
This one,
separate one.
This one did not include crack and chip seal. No, this is just our large patches in our mill and overlay.
So we'll see another one on that also?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions or comments? The motion is to approve the bid award. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Item I is an approval of an addendum to a lease agreement between Nathan Reichling and the City of Watertown, acknowledging installation of drain tile on city property. Public Works Director Heath Von Eye, please tell us what this is about.
First, I'll acknowledge Superintendent Mike Berger, who I think I forgot to acknowledge for the wastewater component here tonight, is also in the room. He's also our solid waste superintendent, and he's been working closely with this item where we've got city-owned land that's immediately adjacent to our active landfill cells out there south of town. That land is currently being leased out for farming purposes, farming operations. That tenant would like to install drain tile on our land. We've talked through that as far as our landfill solid waste permitting with the state. There's no objections or issues there. As far as how the tile would be installed, we're confident that it would be done so in a way that doesn't compromise our active landfill cells or the leachate that comes from them or the collection system for that leachate. Superintendent Berger has also talked to adjacent landowners, and at least one in particular, that our land would that this drain tile would either connect onto or drain out onto, and they are not in opposition of this drain tile being installed on our land. So after all that due diligence, we brought forward this land lease addendum for the council's consideration to allow the tenant to install drain tile on our land that's for future landfill cell construction. There's several instructions in their terms in the contract, but one of them is that they provide GIS location points for where the drain tile gets installed, so that when we go to construct any future landfill cells, we know right where that tile is at, we know right where it needs to be removed, plugged, terminated, whatever we need to do to make sure it doesn't compromise our landfill operations. So with that, Mr. Berger and I will stand by for any questions.
Thank you very much. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the addendum. Motion made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Shetty. We'll go to Councilman Paulson to start the questions.
Thank you, Mayor. Heath, so with installing this drain tile and the consideration of the leachate in the future, providing the GPS coordinates, you kind of hit on that at least we know the location, but are we going to have to remove all of the drain tile to prevent leachate from leaving the site in the future, or is that going to hinder anything like that?
Yeah, I would suspect that any future cell construction, we would look at and analyze that existing drain tile in its locations, and it would either be easily removed. I mean, it's just 6 or 8 inch plastic pipe, perforated pipe that would easily be removed in the construction of our landfill cells. But then that pipe that exists adjacent to any cell we would construct, we would handle that and mitigate that accordingly, whether it's removal of it, the plugging of it, or any other mitigation that we'd have to go through. Mike, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I would just say that that drain tile is going to get knifed in about 3 foot below the surface. And so we just want, when we cease to lease the land and use it for landfill operations, we're going to pull 100% of it out. So it's pretty shallow pipe. And if it was to go into either mining for clay cover for the existing cells or someday possibly be a cell, it'll be excavated far past the depth of the drain tile. We just don't want to leave any remnants of that laying out there anywhere. So that's, it's not encountered later on. So there's no leachate near this. This is simply farm ground at this point.
Councilman Paulson, follow up?
So I guess, there will be no financial impact to us in the future for removing that, since we're going to already be digging the cells.
Yeah, we're going to be. This is basically in the bottom of the topsoil and draining out moisture out. That's all going to be scraped off and moved off to the side. But if you only use part of it, and you just want to know that there's no other drain tile that could be draining anything out of that area. So,
Director Berger, Director Von Eye, how long do you think this lease agreement will continue? I mean, when are the plans for taking it over for our purposes?
I would defer that to the superintendent.
Right now, looking at our annual utilization review of the landfill that we perform, and we do a survey, we've got 42 plus or minus 2 years of landfill capacity there. Of course, that can be shortened as the community grows and waste flows go up. So it's decades into the future.
All right, thank you. Any further questions or comments? The motion is to approve the addendum. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. We're on to old business. Does anyone have any old business? Councilman Tupper?
I don't know if it really falls under old business or an announcement. I'm just going to kind of throw it out here. If you remember right, last week we had a pretty good storm. And first off, I want to thank the street department for everything they did to get out there and work overtime to do it. But a huge thanks from, as a lot of you know, I am the board president of the community transit. We had 2 dialysis patients, and of course, different parts of town that needed to get their dialysis, or to the hospital for their dialysis. The street department went above and beyond, got off the route that they were on and went out to clean those paths to get those patients to their dialysis. I would like to give a huge thank you to the street department for doing that and everything they do every day. So those patients, I'm sure, do also appreciate that. At that day, the transit was not running, but a lot of days when that does happen, we still transport our patients to dialysis. And that day, the roads were just bad enough we wouldn't have got them there without the help of the street department. So a big thank you to Rob and his crew.
Thank you. Any other old business? Any new, Councilman Bueller?
Thanks, Mayor. I don't know if Dusty, if this pertains to you, our Park and Recreation Director. Just a question on the, we had planned on the potential for a fish cleaning station at, I believe at Lake Compesca. Are you familiar with any of that? Okay, well, there was a plan with Game, because I know you're not with Game Fish and Parks.
I was going to say a Game Fish and Parks Director would have known that.
I'm just, and this might be a better question for the city manager or our city engineer, but has there been any discussion? Because at last I knew, there was a plan to move forward with that construction of that project. Do we know anything? Has anybody heard anything?
To the best of my knowledge, we left it with Game Fish and Parks was going to construct it on their property. They needed to visit with community development about some permitting with floodplain, and I thought they were looking at 2024 construction.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any further new business? Are we on to new business? Did I go into? City Manager Mack, would you like to announce our presentation on Thursday or
Yeah,
work session
so
tomorrow?
we do have a work session tomorrow at 5:30 here in the chambers to discuss the street maintenance facility and city hall projects. And then on Thursday at 6 p.m., that is a time change from what was originally sent out in the police department community room. We will have a public information session on the city hall street facility projects.
Thank you very much. So 5:30 tomorrow, 6 o'clock on Thursday. And Councilman Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to give a huge shout out to city staff that worked at the home show this weekend. I did walk through and saw a few, had some good conversations with them, but the community outreach in that is pretty important. You know, they do a lot of stormwater outreach during that time, and it's good for the public that are walking through to hear that. So appreciate them.
Thank you. Any further new business? Any liaison member reports? Any announcements? Councilman Bueller?
I might chime in just for a moment. We did have a Park and Rec Board meeting last week, or I guess it was last Tuesday, and so we're underway with that again. We're still looking for a couple of board members, I understand. We've got some new people on board, and so we're trying to get things moving again. And I think we're looking at onboarding some new folks, you know, getting them up to speed on what their duties and responsibilities will be as a board member, and make sure everybody understands what how our new policies are as far as being I guess a more of a recommending board than a voting board. So just thought I'd mention we're getting things going again, and looking forward to continuing on with a full board here shortly. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further announcements? There's no reason to go into executive session tonight. Therefore, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion made by Councilman Tupper, second by Councilman Bueller. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, the motion is to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Good night and God bless you, Watertown.